Parker. Hi, is that you, Ryan?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Good morning and thank
Yeah.
you so much.
I'm a little scruffier than the last time you saw me. So
Sorry.
It
And
doesn't really, you're still better than me.
Can you
oh my
hear me?
gosh. We can
Yes.
hear you, Judy. Hello.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
Oh, it's so wonderful to see you. Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Well, I'm fine, but without my help here, I've never been able to get on.
Well, that's lovely. And we are so
I
pleased to
figured there
have you.
was something wrong.
No, no,
I,
no. Oh, what a joy to see you.
I
And
thought we had that all fixed up.
well, I'm glad we got it sorted out. And so, Judy, let me just introduce you to the group because you are the only one who I'm going to allow to interject with any questions today. Nobody else except you. So, gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce her, Miss Judith Parsons. She is a World War II veteran, just like you there, Mr. Parker. She worked with, she was a Navy wave, and she was involved with decoding the Enigma machines over there in Washington. Um, yes, sir. And I've known Judy. She's also a signatory to the logbook. And when I told her that we were going to be speaking with you this morning, Mr. Parker, she said she would love to join us and listen to your story. So, like I say, she's going to be the only person. She gets privilege because she is one of our distinguished guests this morning, but nobody else. So we just want to hear from you.
sorry,
Yes.
can I jump in real quick and go against your rules already?
Sure,
I just
absolutely.
want to ask, where is Julia? Where does Julia live?
Well, Judy, you want? There
Can
you
you
go, you
hear
go.
me?
Yes.
Yes.
You can hear me? Oh, great.
Yes.
I guess we're in.
So the
Okay.
question is, where do you live? Where do you live, Judy?
In Pittsburgh, on a suburb of Pittsburgh.
In Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
where she lives, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Well, way up there.
East of Pittsburgh in Forest Hills. Do you know Pittsburgh?
Do you know Pittsburgh, Bill?
No.
No.
No. Well,
Beautiful area though.
I am sure.
Yeah.
So again, I want to thank you, gentlemen, so much for giving us this tremendous opportunity. We're so excited to hear from you, Mr. Parker. This day has been a long day coming. It really is such a privilege and an honor to be here. I'm going to be smiling like an idiot for most of this, but I will shut up shortly, I assure you. And to you, Ryan, and Tim, is it? David, I'm so sorry. David, thank you so very much, gentlemen, for making this happen. We really, really appreciate your time. It's such a joy and a pleasure and an honor again. So thank you for all the effort that you've gone through to allow us this very special day and this time. So I guess, well, I see Lars, are you there?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
here.
we're
I'm
getting.
here.
Well, I guess we'll give folks, we have a couple other folks who we've invited just again to hear your story. One of them is a teacher from Canada. His name is Mr. Scott Masters. And Scott has a program up in a high school in Canada where he's interviewed so many veterans and he's helped us get many signatures in the book. So he may join us as we go along with some of his students, Mr. Parker, who just want to, again, just listen to your story and just appreciate what you have done for our freedom, sir. And that's the whole object of the Logbook Project, is to carry stories and profiles like yours onto the next generation so that they can appreciate in a world that has become so, the attention spans are so short in today's world, and we feel so we're so passionate about bringing stories like yours to the next generation so that people can really appreciate and remember the terrible sacrifices that had to be paid for our freedoms today. So again, thank you. And Lars, how much time should we give before we hand over to Mr. Parker? I see we're about 2 minutes to go.
Yeah, I think we're probably about 5-6 minutes out. So I just want to make sure that we, from a sound perspective, that we're coming across all right for you, Mr. Parker, that you can hear us and so on.
Where is Mr. Parker?
Yeah, but where we can see him, but perhaps you guys can tell us a little bit about where you're physically located.
Uh-oh. So we're actually located in Tulsa, Oklahoma right now. And today we're
Oh.
in the Tulsa Air and Space Museum in one of their conference rooms. Bill doesn't have internet at his house. And so we just had to come 5 minutes away from his house to the museum here. And the museum knows Bill on a first name basis here, and they've graciously offered to let us use their facilities here. And it's a perfect situation. So
Absolutely wonderful. And maybe what I can do is just give a little background as to how all of us,
Sure.
how it is that we all ended up
He
here
lives-
today.
He lives in St. Lucia, the island of. So, sorry, Nick. I'm having a banister put in for the basement steps.
Okay,
So if I disappear, they're gonna need my help or something. Not help, but
somebody has to be in charge. Well,
advice.
Judy, can I ask you to mute your microphone in the meantime, Judy?
I can do that. Can you
Yeah.
give me that the
Well,
sign
if it gets
again?
too noisy, I can do it for her.
Okay, yeah, well, I'll
Well,
ask
I can-
Lars to, to mute you off there, and then when you're ready, just wave frantically, and like I say, we'll give you first dibs. But I was just going to give a very brief background. The Logbook Project is a project where we invite veterans like Mr. Parker and like you, Judy, to sign the book and tell us their stories. And we've been doing it for about 6 years now. And a couple of years ago, one of the veterans, one of the stories that I definitely knew I wanted to have was somebody from Normandy, somebody who had been on those beaches and seen and witnessed that horrible day, which began the invasion of Europe. And one day I came across an article by Mr. Tim Stanley. He's a reporter from Tulsa World. He does a bunch of Tulsa World World War II profiles. And he had this amazing article written about Mr. Parker. And I knew the minute I read that profile that I really, really wanted to meet, or at least to ask Mr. Parker to sign the book. And Tim very, very kindly connected me with Mr. Parker, and I duly sent the book off. Unbeknownst to me, the book arrived, I think it was the day after his dear wife, Colleen, was buried. And I called Mr. Parker on the phone just to ask him if he had received the book, and he was grief-stricken, of course. And yet, I don't know if you remember, Mr. Parker, but when I called you, you were so kind and you were so gracious, and I felt so horrible to just interject myself into your life at that very tender moment for you. But you, in your graciousness, you said you got the book and you were happy to sign it, and you did, and you sent it back. And I wanted to tell you thank you to your face ever since then. So this is my little opportunity. So again, thank you, sir, so very much. We put a little story about you, your profile, on our logbook website, and then we got a message from David and Ryan Fairfield saying that they had accompanied you, sir, back to Europe. I think it was in June of 2022, and we were so excited to hear about this new development with you. And then so then Ryan and David very, very graciously agreed to facilitate all of us here today. And so we've invited a few friends. I see Scott has joined us. I know some of his students are there. So Matthew, my nephew, is there. So we're just very happy to have all of you here in attendance today. I am going to shut up now and hand over to you over there, Ryan, David, and of course, Mr. Parker. And we just leave it to you, sir, to share anything of your experiences that you care to share with us. We're just thrilled to be here, to be a captive audience for you. So thank you again.
Thank you, Bill. They just want you to take over now, Bill, and tell them your story, what you want to tell them about your cowboy life, your landing on Normandy. They'd love to hear they want to hear the events from D-Day. But you take over. Bill can handle this himself. He doesn't need my help.
I know. Oh. And they want me to start pretty early.
You can
Well,
Really,
however you want.
Well,
wherever you want.
all right, I was born in Torrance, California in 1924. That makes me pretty old. And when I was born, why, my mother told me this story, said I was born in a tent, but it did have wood floors. I guess that was something special. Dad worked in the oil fields then. And anyway, why, they named me William Norman Parker. My dad just stepped up and said, my mother told me this, said the boy's name is Bill. He's born a cowboy, he'll be a cowboy, and he'll die a cowboy. And so far I've lived up to that. Anyway, I was going to school. I wasn't very good in it, but I was going. I kept looking out the windows, wanting to go drive a cow somewhere. Anyway, why, when we got ready to graduate, then why, the superintendent come around and told me, said, we're gonna let you go through the motion, but you like one credit having enough to graduate. I said, you mean after going to school 6 years, I can't graduate? He said, no.
6 different schools. Yeah.
6 different ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went all over the country. Dad moved from oil field to oil field. Moved from out western Oklahoma, where my mother was part Choctaw Indian and had an allotment. And Depression come along. Of course, he lost all of that. He had it mortgaged. And he moved back to LaFleur County then. And that's where I grew up, was in the mountains around Fleur County. And of course, I had a good horse, good saddle, and the prettiest girlfriend in the country. That's when the war come along, and soldiers have asked me when I said they couldn't wait to get in, said, when did you enlist? I said, what do you mean enlist? I didn't enlist. They had to come get me. I said, I had a good horse and saddle and the prettiest girl. Why in the world would I want to go to war? But I couldn't make them believe that, so they got me anyway. But anyway, why, my girlfriend waited on me. I went to Camp Walters, Texas. Of course, before that, why, I rodeoed a whole lot. Rode bulls for $1, rode a horse for $1. I had more money than anybody in the country. And the prettiest girl. Anyway, why, the war come along, they took me to Camp Walters, Texas. Spent 17 weeks down there, seeing Texas go by. You stand on a corner and it'd blow by one way and then it'd blow back by. But that's the way I started out in my Army career. First thing I done though, I saluted the lieutenant when my sleeves rolled up. And he made me dig a hole. Got the hole dug and then he made me cover it up. Next time, why, I thought I was smarter than that. Lieutenant come along, the fella with me was smoking a cigarette and he said, hold my cigarette for me a minute. And I did. And I had to salute this lieutenant. I did. He seen the cigarette and made me dig another hole. And I had to cover it up. So I learned about the Army right quick. I took 17 weeks training there. They sent me home on the way from Camp Walter's home 7 days just before Christmas. If I'd have knew then what I know now, I'd have stayed home for Christmas. They just gonna send me over in the seas anyway. Anyway, they sent me to New York.
You tell them about the M1 Garand.
Yeah, when you first went in, Bill,
Oh,
the M1.
okay. Yeah, I'm about to leave that out. When I first got there, I shot a gun all my life. From the time I was little, I used to tell that Dad'd give me a 22 and one shell and say, go get a squirrel. It wasn't quite that bad now, but I'd tell it that way. Anyway, but I could hit what I shot at. Got in the Army, why, first thing they wanted to do was take me to the rifle range, and they did. And I took their rifles, no big old heavy M1, and never had handled anything that heavy before. But anyway, I shot their target. They set up a white one down there of a man. I put every bullet in a hole about 4 feet around, 4 inches around. Man looked at it and he said, that's good shooting. Well, I thought it was too. Anyway, he said, I want you to shoot another one. And they set up another one and I put it up to my left shoulder to shoot. I'm left-handed. He said, no, you shoot right-handed in the Army. I said, no, I shoot left-handed. He said, no, you shoot right-handed. So I took it and shot right-handed. And when he got to counting the bullets, why, you couldn't have put them on this screen. They was everywhere. And he said, that ain't very good. Let's shoot another one. And he stuck up another target. I started to shoot it, and he said, no, wait just a minute. I said, do that again. And I stuck it back up there. He said, now open the other eye. You're shooting with the wrong eye. So I opened the right eye that time, and they gave me a medal for shooting targets good. So I didn't have much trouble after that, but I had to shoot right-handed. Kind of confusing because sometimes I put it up to my left shoulder, but I finally learned to use the right shoulder. Anyway, that's the way my Army started. And I took 17 weeks basic training, mostly marching, and we learned how to throw a hand grenade, and how to set off Bangalore torpedoes. Anyway, next thing I knew, they said the invasion was coming, and so they sent us to England, and we done some training there for a while, back in the Moors. And morning of the 5th, why, they put us on a big ship. I called it a boat, but Navy's let me know it was a ship. It looked like a boat to me. But anyway, why, the morning of the 6th then, why, we had to come down those nets that looked like, they called them ladders, but they looked like nets to me. Crawl down to a boat to get in. The old sea was so rough, sometime it was way away from the ship. And next time it was up there and we got into the boat. And I had trained to be the war cutting section. I had a Bangalore torpedo that was about 6 foot long, 3 foot around, had amytal in each end, dynamite in the middle. And I was to stick mine under the wire first. I had 5 men in my section. They put theirs under in the end of mine and pushed it under there. We got off of that in the beach in water about waist deep, went across the water, across the sand, with bullets hitting right in the ground in front of us. They never did raise it high enough to hit me. Got up there and I stuck my torpedo under the wire and they stuck theirs under. The last man blew the wire and we looked back and there was nobody behind us. The landing craft we had on had got hit just as we got off of it. And anyway, we had fought the Germans on the bank there and had them pretty well whipped back. But we couldn't do nothing with the pillboxes. They were shooting at us out of a little square hole. And we'd thrown all the hand grenades we'd had at it and never did get them in one inside. And we'd shoot in the hole and that didn't stop them. And I didn't ever know who knocked them out, but somebody did. I heard later that the Navy seen that we were hung up and they lowered their big guns and brought their battleships in close. And they shot through the hole in front of that and killed everybody in it. And then they turned us loose. That's when we all started over the banks and fought the Germans. We cleared them out pretty well. And next morning then, when it got daylight, we wasn't in but 2 or 3 miles inland. We were all out of ammunition. I knew all those dead men had ammunition back there on the beach, so I went back and got ammunition. Now, I'm not going to tell you I got it off of the dead men because my mind won't let me remember that. But I did get ammunition. And
May I interject with a question here?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Just gonna try and see. There we go. There's me. I just want to take a. Do you remember? Do you remember coming across the UK to the UK? What ship were you on, or do you remember at what time that was?
you mean from the landing craft to the beach?
So from New York to England, that was the,
Yeah.
Oh, from New York to England.
yeah.
Yeah, we was on a big Queen Elizabeth,
Ah, right.
big ship. I was on KP most of the time, but I was sick. I usually didn't get on it because I wasn't no sailor. I sure couldn't go stand that ocean. But I finally got across it, got off in whatever that little country is next to England,
Ireland.
Ireland, yeah.
Smaller boat and took us to England. And there we trained from, I think that was probably it was all after Christmas anyway, sometime maybe late January. And we trained up till June the 6th. And that's when we landed in the invasion. That's when we started.
And another question, if you may, Mr. Parker. I assume that there were no complaints of whether you were using your right or left shoulder when you were coming across the beach.
There's no sergeant telling you use your right or left shoulder, whether Bill.
No, there was, I can't tell you what happened to the sergeants or the lieutenants. We were all privates when we hit the beach. I suppose they either got killed or wounded. I don't think they didn't come in, but no, we never had anybody when we got on the beach and went up and next morning while we were all privates.
But how many, Bill?
About 20 or 30 of us. Some of us were from the 1st Division. The 29th Division and 116th Infantry I was in was attached to the 1st Division. And I've noticed now in most of the stories, they talk about the 1st Division, but they hardly ever mention the 29th. And I think it was because we were attached to the 1st. But anyway, we fought right along with them. And after the first day, why, we had things cleaned out pretty well. And well, not quite, because I started down a hedgerow and seen a low place in it. There was a German soldier working on the other side. I could have punched him in the ear with my rifle, but it kind of shocked me, so I let him go. I did throw a hand grenade over the fence over the hedgerow. I probably just scared him. It was a white phosphorus. I didn't have a regular hand grenade. Anyway, that's the first German I saw that was actually alive. Anyway, why, the next morning I went back to the bank and got ammunition. Saw all those dead men on it. You can't imagine what that beach looked like. I can now in my sleep, but. And down at the other end, then they had the wounded all gathered up that they hadn't hauled off yet. I went down there and found a man out of my company, a fellow by the name John Lund. Tried to talk to him, but he had got hit in the head. He couldn't say nothing. Had him all bandaged up. Anyway, I went back to the outfit. Got up there.
Bill, tell him about, you did go into that pillbox.
Well, yeah, on my way back down there, I looked in the pillbox and all of them were dead in there. All the Germans. The one that was shooting at me with his machine gun had fell over and just laying on it. And I looked at him and I said, well, you didn't get me, I'm still here. And you didn't make it. And I went on back then and got ammunition, went back, and the men was all waiting on me, about 20 or 30, I don't know how many. But anyway, they said, what are we going to do now? And I said, well, I hear fighting down this way, and I'm going down there. So I don't know which direction I went, but I thought I went north. Anyway, I come to a sunken road. Looked like a big ditch, but they called it a sunken road. Anyway, I went up to a little town called Verville-sur-Mer, France. And when I got there, there was a lieutenant there, and he hollered at me and said, Sergeant, put your men in this hole. We're going to take this town. I said, well, all right, but I'm not a sergeant. I'm a private, like the rest of them. He said, you are now. From that day on, I was a sergeant. We fought and took the town of Verville-sur-Mer, went on towards Saint-Lô, and when we got to Saint-Lô, we all got back with our regular units.
Bill, let's go back to the beach. When you were hung up on the beach, laying there with about 6 inches of cover, tell them what knocked out, tell them what the Navy did, those 5-inch guns that you could have, were coming right over your head.
Yeah, well, I heard later that Navy man said he had orders to shoot way over our head, not close to us. But when he saw we were hung up, he brought the battleships in close to shore, lowered the big guns, and he wasn't shooting any higher than the ceiling over our heads. That's the reason we can't hear now. But anyway, why, they knocked the pillboxes out, so I give the credit to the Navy for knocking the pillboxes out. course, they couldn't do it without us either, but we sure couldn't do it without them. Anyway, that's when I went on down towards the Veerville, Samir, and we took that little town. And next big town that we come to was St. Louis. And by that time, we had got back with our regular units. I was in the 116th Infantry. I think the 115th in the 29th Division went through St. Louis first, but we had to clean up on both sides because they just went through the middle. Anyway, after we got through it, then we got back with our regular units. And we started fighting all the way across France, all in the hedgerows, all that country from one hedgerow to another. And I guess we fought, I know we went through whatever their capital is.
Here is.
Anyway, I never did hardly know where we was at, but we fought all the way across France and kept them on the move. We got up on the rivers why we had to run patrols across it. And it seemed like every time we turn around, we'd come into a little old river, but we would always stop there. And somewhere or another, they got it in their head I was an Indian, and I ought to be able to go on patrols. So every time they had to send one across the river, they sent me with 5 men. I wouldn't go without at least 5 men. And we'd go across the river and find the Germans. Of course, they'd shoot at us, and I'd let the ones behind us know where they're at. I could have told them before that. They didn't have to go. I knew where they was at, but they wouldn't listen to me. Anyway, that's the way we went across France, from one hedgerow to another one, one farmhouse.
Bill, since you were the first man on the beach and you were the leader, tell them what you did. I don't know how many times across those hedgerows. Who was the first man out across the hedgerow, across that open field to the next one? Who was it? It was you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was not a pusher. I was the leader. And I think it was because I got across the beach first and didn't get hit, so I thought maybe that was the safest place. I know now it wasn't, but I always went first. When after I had to be a squad leader, my squad always had to go first. I was the first man out, and I done that all the way across France, Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg. Got wounded twice. Had to go back once with pneumonia, but they wouldn't keep me. Went through Belgium. Of course, I didn't know it was in Belgium. Anyway, I started through Belgium and I got hit in the shoulder. Anyway,
Bill, tell them you missed one. This is the French Legion of Honor that Bill just got from France. But tell them about your wound in France, Bill. When you got hit in France.
well, yeah, I got hit in France. Anyway, I guess they sent me back to the hospital. I know they did. I didn't have to stay too long. The first time I got hit, and I guess that is in France, I got hit in the foot by shrapnel.
And how long did you wait? You wait 2 weeks marching on that wounded foot?
Yeah, I couldn't go because we were attacking I knew I had blood in my shoe, but I couldn't go. 2 weeks later, why, my foot had swelled up till I couldn't get my boot off. I had to go back. Got back there, why, in a evac tent hospital, they called it. 2 lieutenants there, and they looked at it, and one of them looked at it and said, well, we got to take it off. It's got gangrene in it. And if you'd been listening, you could have heard me over here. I was pretty bad to cuss then. I said, you ain't gonna take my foot off. And there was a captain heard it. He come looked at it. He said, no, don't take his foot off. Get a bucket of hot water, fill it full of Epsom salt, soak it till it comes to a head, then take that metal out. And that's what they did. But as he walked off, he turned around and told him, said, that's what my grandma would do. Well, anyway, I still got my foot.
And then tell them about the Royal Engineer story right after that.
Yeah.
The Royal Engineer.
When they sent you back to England, Bill, and you had to go to the hospital.
I don't know whether they don't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
you gotta tell this one. Yeah.
they sent me back to England for a while, in the hospital with my foot. And while I was there, why, there was another sergeant come by and told me, said, we're going down here to a pub tonight. Why don't you go with us? And I said, well, I haven't got any clothes. All I got pajamas on. I said, well, there'd be a lot of them are just like you. Said, come on, go. Well, I was on crutches, so anyway, I went with him. We went in the pub. Got us a little beer, but they didn't drink beer like they do over here to get drunk. They just sip it along, you know. Well, I wasn't a drinker, so I just sipped mine too. But while I was sitting there then, there was one of these English girls sitting over at another table. She come over and sat down on my good knee. I thought that was all right. And we were kind of talking. About that time, there were some British soldiers come in. And one of them just stepped up in front of me. Of course, she jumped up and run back to the other table when she seen him. And he shook his finger at me. And he said, that's my girl, and I'm a Royal Engineer. And when he did, I hit him and knocked him plumb through a plate glass window. He ought not have said Royal. If he'd have just said, that's my girl, I'd have said, well, she's yours, all right. But he had to put the Royal on it, like he was something really special. Anyway, everything was blacked out, you know, and all that light went out. Why, this sergeant to his wrist, the Jack grabbed me by the arm and said, let's go. Them bobbies will be here. That's what they called the policemen. We ran out in the street and we could hear them coming. And they put their telephone booths out in the middle of the street. He run up there to open one of them up. The door was locked. He just broke the glass out and reached in to open the door. We got in there and hunkered down and let the police go by. And then we went on back to the hospital.
That is a great story.
Anyway, I was there and I'd heard that if you ever got in a foot, they'd send you home. So I knew I had me a ride home. I got hit in the foot. Well, one morning there, the doctor had come by and looked at all of us that had been wounded, had me to pull off some kind of a shoe they had on me. And when he did, 2 of my toes just jumped right straight up. He punched them back down and they jumped up again. He punched them back down and looked at me and said, you're ready to go. So they sent me back to the front. And there, then I began fighting the hedgerow country again. Fought all the way across Belgium, Holland. One fight was kind of like the rest of them. There was one, though, I remember and never will forget. I was at that time I was a platoon sergeant, and I had a foxhole dug, and I got replacements every night. And I got a young boy in that looked like he was about 15. I guess he was 18, but he didn't look it. And I didn't know what to do with him. I told him, I said, you just stay with me and be my runner. And so I've got a foxhole dug there. I said, you get in it and get some rest, because we're going to attack in the morning. Well, we did attack the next morning, but I was in reserve, my platoon was. And I could hear the fighting, but nobody come back to tell me to move up, which they're supposed to do. I went up to see about that and found out they'd went across the road and they hadn't had time to come back. So I come back to get my platoon, and my foxhole, a shell had hit in it and blew this kid's head plumb off. I couldn't tell what it looked like. It bothers me yet.
I can imagine that. Holy smokes.
I'll never get over that, but it wasn't my fault. I couldn't help it. But I kept him there, you know. But that's just one of the things that happened. And something happened everywhere you everybody.
Bill, right before that incident, I think you went out to find the Germans because there was a group that had gone too far, and you described some Germans shooting their machine gun at you and barely missing you. Is that correct?
There wasn't.
Right before the young boy, the young soldier was killed, I think while you were gone, you narrowly missed getting shot with a machine gun. Is that correct?
They were all gathered up and you thought they were looking at mail or something, weren't they, Bill?
Look at what.
You thought they were in a circle looking at their.
Oh, yeah. When I went to see where the Germans were, why, this hedgerow country was like farmers here put up a fence. Why, they had hedgerows from one field to another, and I went up seen an opening in it, and I went through that. Just as I got through, then I seen a machine gun sitting there, but I seen all these Germans around in a circle. I think they was having a mail call or something. And I seen one run towards that machine gun, and I knew good and well I should have shot him, but something told me to run, so I run, and he got the machine gun, and he got to shooting at me just as I went through an opening in the hedgerow up there. I don't know whether I believe this or not. But anyway, I jumped the hedgerow. I had a pack on, and I broke the straps on that pack and was dragging it. I told a story that they shot it off, but in a sense, I don't think they could have done that. But anyway, why, I finally loosened it up and let it fall, run on back behind our lines in, and got back with our regular units in where I belong. And we fought all the way then across France. I didn't know when I went through Belgium or Holland or any of that, but somewhere up on the Ruhr River, why, we got stopped. I've read later that they wasn't arresting us, they had us to wait on somebody else. Anyway, why, we run patrols across the Ruhr River. Well, I guess by now you know who had to lead the patrols. Well, every time they run one, why, I had to take a patrol across the river. And we'd go by across in a little rubber boat, made all kind of racket. Then we'd go up on the other side. But one of these times when I come back from the hospital, why, I met a first lieutenant before I got back to the company. And he said, I'm glad you're back. We got on patrol tonight. I said, well, you could at least waited till I got back to the company to tell me. But anyway, why, I had to lead another patrol across. And the only time I can remember ever having a lieutenant or captain or anything with me on patrol, he went with me. And we went up the other side, crossed in this rubber boat, and going up, and I was leading it all. And about that time, a machine gun cut the brush right over our heads. Of course, we all got down on our bellies. And I stopped. Lieutenant.
Didn't you hear that thing go back? Bill?
Yeah. Lieutenant, this was a little after that.
No.
Lieutenant crawled up there and said, what do you stop for? And I said, well, I heard a machine gun up right in front of us. And he said, well, we got to go on. And I said, what are we going to do with the machine gun? And he said, we'll just ignore it. I don't know how you ignore one. But anyway, why, I didn't stand up. I just been over real close to the ground. Went up and the machine gun cut the brush right over our heads. And then I crawled back over where he was and I said, you still want to ignore it? He said, no, let's get out of here. And he took the men and went back across the river. I stayed there and fired a few shots to let them know I was still there. And then I went over the banks and down across the river, got back to our company. And
Bill, that's when you got the bronze medal for valor, for bravery.
well, I think that's when I got it. Yeah, they gave me a medal of some kind, I think, for staying back to make sure they all got out. All I can think of, I got it for. Everybody was getting medals but me. Anyway, why, my whole platoon should have had a silver star, every one of them. But it wasn't the way they give out. I don't know. Seemed like officers didn't have no trouble getting them, but the rest of us didn't get much recognition. Anyway, we fought our way all across France, all across Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg, Denmark, and was fixing to take a town of Berlin. And we got orders not to, that the Russians wanted to take it. And that suited us just fine. We let the Russians have it. And we fought for all that was left there. And finally, why, I don't know, a bunch of Russians come up in a truck. I think they was all drunk, because they jumped out and began dancing. And the war must have been over. We didn't know it because we're still fighting the Germans that were still fighting us. And we fought 2 or 3 days after the war was over. But we finally found out it was all over. When the Germans began giving up, they give up 20 and 30 and 40 at a time. we had so many, we didn't know what to do with them. We got where we just tell them they'd come meeting us with their rifles over their heads. Throw your rifles down over here and keep them walking. We called battalion, tell them there's Germans was coming. I never didn't know what they done with them, but they put them in a camp somewhere. But that's the way that war kind of ended for us.
Bill, you gotta tell them the story about how you shot Hitler.
Yeah, you got to hear that. I can't get many people to believe that I shot Hitler, but I did. Way through there somewhere early in the war, why a bunch of Germans run into a dugout, and there was some artillery men there that tank men, that's what they were, they're tank men. One got out of his tank, asked me, said, Sergeant, would you have to get them men out of this dugout? These Germans went in there. Well, we went in and got them out all right. And I had a little old pistol I picked up in a French house. There was a 32-20. I learned that I could shoot carbine shells in it by cutting off a little lead in the end. So when I'd go into a close place, I used it. On the way out, why, one of these tank corps men had a 45 6-shooter, not an automatic, a 6-shooter. And he said, "Oh, I'd like to have that little gun you got." I said, "I'd like to have that 45. So we traded guns. And after that, I carried it on my hip, just like John Wayne does in the movies. And I used it every time I went into a building. Well, I went into a big building there late in the evening trying to find us a place to stay because the winters got so cold, we had to get inside at night. And this was a big auditorium. And as I went in, it was getting dark, but I saw a big man down in the window down there. And I hollered at him. I said, "Stand up and turn around, throw up your hands." I knew he couldn't understand me, but I knew he would know what I meant. He didn't move. I hollered at him again to stand up, which he was standing up. But I said, "Throw up your hands and turn around." He didn't. And I just up with my 45 and I shot him. And his head fell off. Well, I thought that was unusual. Well, I couldn't shoot a head off with one shell, but I went down to see what I'd done. And it was a big statue of Hitler made out of chalk. I shot his head off. So after that, and every time I got a chance, they'd almost say, "This is Sergeant Parker. He shot Hitler." I can never get that down.
There's the 45. He has it today.
Oh,
That's-
really?
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
And Colleen's picture is in the handle. He made that.
Wow.
Yeah, I made me some pearl handles out of German airplane windshield. Cut it out and put it on that and put my girlfriend's picture in it then right behind it. And I've still got it. Still her picture still in it.
Wow.
I lost her a couple of years ago, but that's the worst thing ever happened to me. Any of you got any questions you want?
Tell him about meeting Eisenhower.
Oh, yeah, I met General Eisenhower too. And I met another general besides that. I'll just get them both in here. I met General Eisenhower. We were up on the lines and it was muddy and wet and sleeting and snowing, and they took some of us back behind to meet some big officer, and we got back there as Eisenhower. He come down the line shaking hands with us, and he shook hands with me, and he said, "Sergeant, where are you from?" And I said, "Oklahoma." He said, "Well, we're neighbors. I'm from Kansas." Of course, I knew that. And he said, "Anything I can do for you?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, if they are, you just ask me." I don't know why in the world I didn't ask him to train overshoes with me. He had them big fleece line overshoes, but I didn't get that done. But anyway, that's the way I left Bet Eisenhower.
Didn't he say anything you can do? And you, anything I can do for you, Sergeant?
Yeah.
Send me home.
Yeah. Yeah, I wondered why I didn't say that. I ought to have said, "Well, get me out of this mess." But I didn't. Anyway, why, that is one of the officers I met. Next one I met was General Patton. I know you've all heard of General Patton. If we'd had all officers like Patton, that war wouldn't lasted 30 days. He was a man that wanted to go get them. And we all thought the world of him. Anyway, I met General Patton on a roadblock. He was jumped out of his Jeep and was directing traffic. They was all kind of bunched up together. Of course, when he got up to me, we were marching along right in front of him, and he stuck his hand out and I shook hands with him. I've thought of that lately, though. He probably didn't intend to shake hands with me, but I did anyway. But anyway, then I saw him at another roadblock one time, and I think he remembered me because he mentioned that he said, "Sergeant, just keep moving." Anyway, went on. But I met General Patton too. And of course, well, he was just the best you could get. Anyway, he got killed over there after the war was over. But when I went back to France, or Belgium won, I don't remember now just which,
Luxembourg, yeah.
in Luxembourg,
Yeah.
I met his granddaughter. Nice looking young blonde-headed woman. Had a little baby. Some part of them did anyway. Anyway, why, this woman come up to me and told me, said, "I'm General Patton's granddaughter." And she pulled her glasses off and squinted up her eyes just like he did. And I said, "Well, you sure are. You're General Patton's granddaughter, all right." Anyway.
Oh, wow.
Anyway,
That's cool.
I got 3 generations of Pattons. His daughter, granddaughter, and then little baby.
And Pat.
All of them. And
You know,
I kept seeing this lady with the baby. She was trying to get up to shake hands with me, and she didn't seem to ever make it. So I told her, Plank, name was Plank, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Plank, I said, "Go back there and get that lady, the baby. She's been trying to get up here." Well, about that time they all moved in. We moved into houses because the weather got so bad outside we couldn't stay out there. Anyway, he come back and told me, said, "She'll be with us all day. We'll get to see the baby." Anyway, we was another town then, and this they had 4 or 5 of us, World War II veterans sitting there. 4 of us, I think. Anyway, why, she kept trying to get up there with that baby, and I just got up and went over there and said, "Lady, let me hold the baby." And she did, and I went back and sat down. She come up close as she could. I seen a fella back behind us kept getting closer. I think he was the daddy. He wasn't gonna let it get very far away from him. Anyway, I got to hold the baby. I met 3 generations of Pattons. The baby.
This is Bill and Al at Patton's grave in Luxembourg.
Wow. You know, when Bill was introducing the story of Patton's daughter, before he spoke about the baby, for a minute there, I thought he was going to say she sat on his knee too. But I'm glad.
Bill was wounded in Belgium. Tell him about the shrapnel hit you in the back, Bill. You were wounded in Belgium.
Yeah, I was wounded in Belgium. His shrapnel hit me in the back. And we didn't quit till then. Fought for another day or 2. Finally, it was so sore I had to go back. I see if anything was broke. Got back there and the nurse looked at it and they x-rayed it. Said there wasn't nothing broke, but she said it looks like hamburger meat. And I said, well, it don't matter much. She said it will when you get old. And it does. It still hurts. But
Wow.
that is when I got webbed in Belgium. And
I think that was December 10th, Bill, and then they just put you back fighting in the Battle of the Bulge.
yeah, they just kept me 3 days, sent me back to the front. I couldn't even work a home rifle up, but they sent me back anyway. Evidently, they needed everybody they could up on the front. And that's when we worked, fought our way all across Belgium and Holland and Luxembourg and ended up on the Ruhr River. And I guess along about that time, the war was over.
So, gosh, thank you. So, Bill, if you don't mind, we have a few questions from some of the students that are in attendance today. If I can just relay their questions. So Jerry Yan wants to know if you can tell us about where you were when the Pearl Harbor attack happened.
Where were you and when Pearl Harbor happened? Remember you were riding your horse and
It was, I think it was on a Sunday, wasn't it?
yeah.
I think it was on a Sunday. And I was going about 10 miles from where we lived, a horseback. Everything I done, I was doing a horseback back then. And I was going to see her, and a lady passed the house. A lady she didn't have a husband. I think he'd run off, but she had 3 daughters. One of them run out and told me, said, bomb Pearl Harbor. And I said, well, what's Pearl Harbor? She said, well, it's some island we own. I never had heard of it before. But anyway, that's the way I found out the war was going on.
Wow. So another question from Christian Baldassara. Hope I said that right. He asked, and you did speak about this a little bit, but Christian wants to know, did you get drafted? And when did you get drafted?
Yeah, you didn't volunteer. When did you get drafted?
When did I?
Yeah. You were still.
Well, I got drafted just before I got out of high school. I wasn't ever very good in it. But anyway, I got drafted about a month before high school was out. My dad went down to courthouse and got me a deferment for a month. And as soon as high school was out, That is in last part of 43, I guess. Anyway, why they took me to Fort Sill. Yeah, I went from little old town of Shady Point. I had to catch a bus to Fort Sill. Got up there, why then they sent us to me to Camp Walters, Texas. That's where I took my 17 weeks training was in Texas.
Bill, tell them when you got your graduation from high school. When did you graduate from high school?
Well, I liked one credit when I started to go up to get my diploma. They put this cap and gown on me. Just before I went up on the stage, the lieutenant or the superintendent come along and told me, said, we're gonna let you go through the motion, but you like one credit being able to graduate to get your diploma. I said, you mean, and I had been to 6 different schools. I'd been in 3 up around Falls Valley. My mother had land out there. And then we come back to LaFleur County, and I went to a country school there called Folsom. It was named after my grandpa on my mother's side. I went to school there, and then they consolidated it with one at Melton, a little town with a little bigger school, not much. And I started there, and they consolidated it then with McCurtain, which was a little bigger. And I went there. And then that's when the superintendent told me that I like one credit. And I said, you mean after going to 6 different schools, I can't get it? He said, no, come back this summer and I'll see you get it. And I said, well, I can't come back. I already got a call to the Army. 67 years later, I went back and got my diploma. So
Well done. That's a great story, Bill. Ryan Yao, I hope I pronounced that right, Ryan. He would like to know, and I think you did mention about your Choctaw heritage, or did I read that somewhere? But Ryan wants to know if you experienced any sort of prejudice or bias or racism when you were in the Army.
Did they treat you because they found out you were a Choctaw native? Did they treat you different than some of the other?
yeah, they did. My mother had always told us, don't never tell anybody you're part Choctaw Indian. But anyway, it got on my record somewhere. And every time they wanted a patrol, well, they'd say, get that Indian. I had to lead patrols when, well, it wasn't necessary. I could have told them where all them Germans was because I'd seen where they're shooting from. But I had to take patrols out. And I did. Never did get shot. One time though, I don't like to tell this either, but I will. When the company assaulted before me, I think it was the 2nd Battalion, called our headquarters and said they had the patrol missing, 2 men. And they couldn't find them and wanted to know if we'd seen any in front of us, and we hadn't. But our officer said, well, we'll send out a patrol to see if we can find them. And of course, you know who had to go. That Indian had to go. So I took a patrol and went up with 5 men. I would never go without at least 5 men. 5 men could kind of fight their way out of something, but 2 couldn't. But anyway, we found the 2 men they'd sent out. both of them dead, but they hadn't been shot. They had ropes in their mouth tied behind their ears and tied behind some kind of a machinery and drugged to death. That's the way the SS troopers were.
Wow.
German soldier was like us. He didn't want to fight either, but they had to. But the SS troopers they weren't humans.
Wow. Gosh, Julia, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, I wondered if he had ever gone back to Germany after the war.
Bill, they want to know if you went back to Germany after the war. You were in the German occupation forces, but you never went back. We haven't gone, went to Luxembourg, Belgium, and France, but not Germany.
No,
But he did occupy Germany after the war.
yeah, I stayed there for a long time after the war was over.
My father-in-law was from West Virginia originally, but he went to Oklahoma in 1920. And he was a cowboy also with the King ranches. They were some kind of relative. And you sound just like him, same accent. So my husband was born in Fort Cobb, and they lived in Anadarko and eventually got to Oklahoma City. And he never went back to West Virginia. He loved Oklahoma. So from West Virginia to Oklahoma is quite a difference.
Yeah.
And he loved it.
I was there, but
Well, I was going to say I got back to Germany a time or two. And just this last winter, I was Zooming with a German school teacher, and she wanted to use my experience as a classroom lecture type of thing. And she did. And I had the worst time with the idea that this was a friend now, and they were once our enemy. And I kept having to change the word enemy, and I was happy when we sank a sub, that type of thing. But I had trouble with it. That's why I wondered if you had gone back, and did you have any trouble with the talking to Germans? No, but apparently they hold no grudge against America. At least I found none.
You'll
So
tell them about the German lady that called you from Germany. Remember the German lady that called you
yeah,
and what she said to you?
she thanked me for liberating their country. This German lady did. And I told her, I said, well, lady, I thought we was fighting your country. And she said, you were, but you liberated us. That we were prisoners in our own country. Said we wasn't allowed to. She said she was 15 when I landed on the beach at 18. Said she wasn't even allowed to go home. She wasn't over working in factories, but she had to make beds and things like that for the soldiers. And she thanked me for liberating her country.
oh, for goodness sake. That's interesting. I thought there would be a lot of nastiness come through, but I have found none. And I get requests from Germany, especially for autographs, which amazes me because you'd think they wouldn't particularly like me, but I guess autograph seekers are not fussy about who they have autographed.
Yeah.
But I felt a sense of guilt for having had a slight hand in destroying some of the Germans. I realize it was war, but I just, there's still people, you know.
When,
So that was my question.
when we went back to Belgium, I guess it was pretty cold, rain in the stove. We was inside. I don't know what town was we in.
Bastogne, I think.
Stone, I think it was, the mayor there. Mayor got up and made a big speech for all of us. And he began telling us about how we tore up his town.
Bill, that was in Boulogne, France. That was Boulogne. That was our first meeting with the mayor of Boulogne.
I didn't know where we was at. But anyway, this mayor got to telling us how we tore up his town. And he got through talking while the lady come over with a microphone and said, "Did you want to say something?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I guess I do now." And I said, "Mayor, I'm sorry we had to tear up your town, but I didn't know of any other way of us taking it. And I'm really sorry for all the windows I shot out of it." And he turned around to me and smiled and said, "We forgive you a long time ago."
Oh,
Bill had to shoot the windows out because there were snipers behind this in the steeples. So
oh,
he shot the windows out before they got to shoot at him.
no. Also, I wondered if you ever married the pretty girl from Oklahoma.
The pretty girl that you met in high school, Colleen. Tell them how you met her.
That's the best thing ever happened to me.
You married her.
Okay,
Okay.
we it was all outside range then. Nobody had fences. We run our cattle on the outside. And in the summertime, we run them back in the mountains. And my job was to go back and see about those cows. I was the cowboy in the family. So I had to go back all the time and look after the cattle. And I did. I went back in the mountains one day, about 10 miles from where we lived. Found all these cows. Coming out of the mountain, I found a big grapevine with them big blue grapes on it. I sat there and ate all them I could. Come out to the other side of the mountain, come down a road that away from home, and I had to cross in to get back to the road I was supposed to be on home. And as I rode up there, this girl was standing at the mailbox getting her mail. And I rode up and talked to her. We talked 45 minutes or an hour. Finally, she said, "I've got to go. I got to get back. They be calling me." And they did. She went back to the house. Well, the rest of that summer, I couldn't get my mind off of her. Every time I went after the cows, why, I went back to the mailbox, but she wasn't there. And I was too bashful to go up to the house, just being 16, ask for a drink of water. But anyway, that summer, then the summer was over and I had never saw her again. But every time I got by there, she wasn't at the mailbox. Anyway, why, that fall, all the little schools were having pipe peppers. And I heard when this little school of Rosedale was having a pot supper. And I told my mother, I said, "I'm going to Rosedale to a pot supper." And she said, "Well," of course, she had 5 kids to take care of. She had to earn me a pair of pants before she'd let me go. Anyway, why, she said, "You got any money?" I said, "No, I hadn't." She didn't have either. But she said, go ask your daddy. He said, he's probably got a little. Well, that is like getting it out of the mint when you get it from him. But anyway, I went down to saddle my horse. Dad come out and wanted to know where I was going. I told him I was going to Rosendale to pie supper. He said, well, you need a little money. And I said, well, I haven't got any. He from I could found a quarter. Give me that 25 cents. And I went on to the pie supper. Well, when I got there, of course, I knew her name. So I asked the girls there what her pie was, and they told me. And when it come up, why, pies was bringing 10, 15 cents a piece. I had to give that whole 25 cents for hers, but best 25 cents I ever spent in my life. Anyway, why, when the country girls all started walking down the road together, why, I'd got on my horse and just rode up beside of her, stepped off like I was going to tie a calf, got her by the hand, and I had her 73 years after that. And no two people ever had a better life than we had.
Oh, great.
Never had nothing, but we had a good life.
You had children?
She asked if you had children, Bill.
Yes, we did. We had one little girl in Wichita, Kansas, but she just lived 2 days and we lost her.
Oh,
And we wasn't satisfied there then, so we left Wichita and went to Oregon. I worked out there. And anyway, why we just run around over the country for about 5 years, one place to another. I was a good carpenter by that time, and you could get a job anywhere. So we'd go from one town to another, and I'd get broke where I'd go get a carpenter job and get enough money to go a little further. We looked the whole United States over, and then we had a son in Wichita that was born there. And when he was born, she told me, no, he wasn't born. He was born in Tulsa, or we'd come back here then. But she told me, said, we've got a boy now, we got to quit running around, so we stayed here in Tulsa. And that's when we stayed here. Anyway, of course, we lost a little girl, but we had a son. And just sent him off to college, just had the one boy. Didn't think we'd ever have any grandkids, because he come in with a little old skinny girl. But anyway, why, wasn't very long why we had Jake, grandson. No, we just tickled to death about Jake, spoiled him. Wasn't long then we had Jessie, and we spoiled her too. Then we knew that was all of them. Then we had Jackie. Well, they knew that was it. More went along, we had Jared. I had four grandkids. Now each one of them's got 2 kids apiece. I've got a big family,
you do. It sounds lovely.
but I wouldn't say
Wonderful.
all of them. Oh, they're good. Jared's got a little boy that he's gonna be a mess. He's 2 years, a little better, 2 years old.
Oh,
Set him up on a horse the other day. He can't talk. Just barely does walk. I set him up on a horse and led him for him and held one leg so he wouldn't fall off. We walked around in circles and I got tired. Why, I started to take him off. That little sir said, no, and he wouldn't get off. He just got another cowboy now. But each one of them got 2 kids apiece now, so I've got a big
Yeah.
family. And I,
Oh. Right. Well, thank you.
Jake is the oldest. And he's a wrestling coach at Skytube, made a school teacher. And he's sure enough a good calf roper. He can win anywhere he goes. And Jessie then, she come along and we thought she'd be the last one. But she's married and works for, I think, St. Francis Hospital, the one she works for. Anyway, they've all got jobs, doing good.
Good.
All got 2 kids apiece.
Jeez.
Sounds like the cowboy blood runs in the veins there, Mr. Parker. I have one more question, if you don't mind. This one is a quick one from Darren Goldenberg. This is the last one, and he wants to know, what was it like when you got home after the war?
What was it like, Bill, when you got home after the war? The nightmares, the dreams you had for years and years and years about Omaha Beach. What was that like?
Well, it wasn't good. Of course, I got home, why the girl I was going with, we'd stayed in love with each other through mail, you know, all the time I was gone. She'd write me about twice a week and I'd write back when I could. But anyway, we got married and we had the one boy. But what is the question?
Your nightmares you had when you pulled that 45 out and it wouldn't shoot, the Germans were coming after you.
Yeah. I was over at her folks' house one night, and they lived kind of on a creek down there. Well, I kept this 45 with me all the time. I carried a gun so long, I wouldn't leave home without one. But I had nightmares that every time I got in a fight, why I tried to shoot that gun and it wouldn't shoot. I couldn't pull the trigger.
Huh.
Some folks' house one night, and I had one of them, and they lived on the creek down there. So I just got up the next morning, took that gun down to the creek, and I shot 6 hells out of it. It never missed a lick. But I kept having those nightmares, and she was the only one that ever knew about it. Nobody ever asked me about the war, or what I'd done, or where I'd been, or what anything. And she didn't either. She knew because she'd have to wake me up at night and tell me the war was over. But she knew about it.
Oh,
Can I just, yeah, sure.
Our trip back to Normandy and this year in June, Bill had nightmares about that beach his whole life. And when we went back, that beach
I
was
don't think so.
clean. It was a beautiful day. There was kids playing, dogs playing. He looked at that beach and saw it like it was today. And that was closure. That the dreams kind of left.
I looked at that beach and looking across, and I cried. And they let me alone until I guess I kind of got over it. Looked back across that water and I couldn't see nothing. But next day then, they took me down a little further because I told them that wasn't where I landed. They thought it was. But I knew I'd landed closer to a big cliffs down in there. And when I got down there and looked at that beach where I landed, little kids was playing, had their little dogs, all of them having a good time, some out swimming in the water. And I haven't had a nightmare since. I'll never dream about the beach anymore. I think if I did, I would just have those little kids playing on it. I don't know, I've had that for years, but I'm over it now.
That is a beautiful memory, Mr. Parker, and I think we all wish you nothing but peaceful dreams. That's really very special.
Now, don't you, Bill?
Yes. Well, of course, that's all another story, you know. But I was born in Torrance, California in 1924. And they named me William Norman Parker. And when they did, my dad and my mother told me this, I was born in a tent, oil field tent. But
Yeah.
she did say it had wood floors.
You told them that at the first, Bill. We've already,
You know?
yeah.
Well, anyway, why, he stepped up and said, this boy's name is Bill. He's born a cowboy, he'll be a cowboy, and he'll die a cowboy. And I've lived up to that. I still got horses, I got a cow too. I still rope when I get a chance. Of course,
Can I ask one question? And I don't know if you've seen the movie Saving Private Ryan, but I'm always interested to know what veterans, I mean, Hollywood can never capture. But I would love to hear what your thoughts are on that movie, if you've seen it.
I saw Private Ryan, and I would like to see it again. I haven't found it on anything yet, but I'd like to see it again. But what I remember about it, it was a whole lot just like it was. I think there were a few things that wasn't quite that way, but as a whole, it was a good movie. Good, honest movie.
Bill did a podcast. It was the Derek Duval show. We did it about 6 months ago. And the same question was asked to Bill, what do you think about Saving Private Ryan? And Bill said about what he said today. And that got back to Steven Spielberg. And it got back to me to tell Bill, Steven Spielberg says, thank you for your comment about his movie.
Wow, that's great. I mean, I think that's the highest form of praise that anybody could ask for. So I could well imagine he's very proud about that. Well, I'm looking at the time here, gentlemen. It has raced by, as I knew it would. I cannot thank you enough, Mr. Parker, for what you have shared here with us today. I can assure you that every single person here has been a tremendous beneficiary of your memories and your life story. I don't want to keep you all any longer. I'm sure we all have things to do. We're happy to stay and chat a bit if you wanted to, but I'm very conscious of you and your time. I don't know if anybody has any burning. I'm sure we all do have many other things that we would love to ask, but and certainly Lars and myself will keep this conversation going in the background with Ryan and with you, David, because I'm sure that we want to hear in detail about your visit, your more recent visit, and we got into it a little bit today, but for sure, we from the Logbook Project definitely want to cover that in more detail so that we can present it along with our website and our stories as well. I can't tell. I think my biggest takeaway here for today was hearing you say that when you dream of those beaches now, you think of the little kids on them, and that you have peace and closure. That brings me so much joy. I'm so happy for you. None of us can imagine what you've been through and the horrors that you've lived through and that you've lived with for your whole life. But to hear you say that, I feel so happy for you, sir. So again, I'll leave you to have the last word today. But we'll close off there.
I've got one more I want to tell you that means more to me than all of the rest of them put together. I was in the cafe at Sperry, and there was a little girl come up to me. I don't know how old she is, 5 or 6, with a little platter, and she had some toys on it. And she stuck them up there. I didn't know what she wanted to do with them. I picked one of them up, and when I did, she run. And I've still got the toy. But then I asked man up at the cashier about it, and next time I was there, I said, that little girl give me that toy. Did she want me to have it? And he said, she sure did. She wanted you as an American soldier to have her toy. It means more to me than all of the ribbons, all of the things that's happened to me, that a little American girl would remember us.
Beautiful story, sir. And they remember you. I've met many of them who are so grateful to you and for what you and all your fellow soldiers did on those beaches. So we thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Been an absolute honor, sir. Absolute honor. So to Ryan and David, gentlemen, like I say, thanks to both of you for really facilitating us today and being such wonderful guides along the way, and moving his memories along and keeping it flowing so beautifully. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so very, very much. And we, as I said, we will keep these conversations going in the background. We definitely want to pick up next time with the visit that you had. And that's about it. Lars, I don't know if you have anything else. If there's anything from any of the folks who have attended today, you all know how to find me. Julia, thank you so much for sharing with us. I think you've enriched this discussion tremendously with your questions and the exchange. I loved watching you and Mr. Parker exchange just some thoughts as veterans. That was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed it
thank
too.
you.
Thank
Ryan,
you,
I
Mr.
think you wanted to
Parker.
say something?
Yes,
I just want
Ryan.
to find out all of the students. Can you tell us, is this a college or a high school? What's the story with all the students? And is Mr. Masters the professor?
I'll let Scott go.
Yeah, hi, I'm a high school teacher up in Toronto, and these are 4 of the students who are taking our grade 10 history course. And of course, we're teaching Canada's history in World War II. And not too long ago, the students had the chance to meet with a Canadian D-Day vet who went ashore at Juno Beach in the first wave, I thought it would be a good idea for them to hear from an American veteran as well.
Perfect. Excellent.
Yeah, but thank you so much, Mr. Parker. We really enjoyed meeting you. And Nick, thank you for connecting us.
Thank you for having me.
And I also want, Henry, where are you? Henry is our US American student. I'm sure you want to give Mr. Parker a shout out.
Yeah, it was awesome meeting you and hearing your story. Thank you so much for coming here and for giving me this opportunity to listen to you.
Thank you.
And just a little bit about Henry. I met Henry a few years ago. I think it was through the Veterans Breakfast Club. Henry started writing to veterans during COVID when everybody was on lockdown. And Henry has a collection of gosh, how many letters do you have now, Henry?
Hundreds. I've lost track now. Yeah.
Hundreds. And Henry has sent me to some veterans and I've exchanged a few with him. So Henry's doing a great job. Thank you again, Henry. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. And I've wrote a letter to Mr. Parker, so hopefully he'll get that in the mail soon.
That's right. That's right. He asked for your address and you'll get a letter from Henry. So thank you, Henry.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Bill has another appointment at 12:15 with a student in college in Montreal. So,
Wow. Well done. Gosh.
Uh,
Well, we let you go.
For joining up today, and it's been an honor to listen to you, Mr. Parker. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye,
Julie.
all.
Thanks, everybody. Bye bye. All the best, Mr. Parker.